I'll never forget this day. In 2005, I was in 5th grade in Marquette, Michigan. We were out on recess, and the entire playground was full of half the 5th grade class. It was probably about February, based on how much nasty brown snow we had. It was definitely under freezing though, and suddenly, the entire sky turned bright purple for a second. Like a flash of lightning, but without the lightning. Immediately, people started screaming and running. The teachers, who, when I look back at it, looked kind of perplexed, told us that it was lightning, but the entire sky had turned purple and black. This was 20 years ago, and I'll never forget it. I know this story is going to sound weird and crazy, but hear me out. I'm not too familiar with this sub, but a friend of mine who's always talking about metaphysics, Twilight Zone, simulation type stuff, loves this sub and keeps telling me to post this. In fact, no doubt he'll read this. Hey Zane. Anyway, here's my story. 2 weeks ago, I was about to get ready for a party at 6 o'clock. And just before I started getting ready, one of my friends messaged me, super excited, because a boy she's had a crush on for the last 4 years finally asked her out, and he was coming with her to the party. While I was texting her back, my younger brother walked into my room and asked if I could drive him to his friend's house, which I agreed to do. And then I went to the bathroom to have a shower and do my makeup. So, I got in the shower, but when I went to wash my hair, I realized that my conditioner was gone. I was pretty pissed off, because I'd only bought it a couple of days beforehand, and it's an expensive brand. My younger sister always uses up my things, so I knew she'd used it all. She'd also trashed the bathroom, leaving water everywhere and her dirty towel on the floor. I was super pissed off and was about to get out of the shower in order to tell her off and get some more conditioner. But as I went to get out, I realized at the last second she'd kicked the grippy mat that we have at the bottom of our shower and tub up. Our shower is super slippery without the grippy mat. So, as I went to step out, my foot slipped, and I fell with my neck down onto the edge of the tub. Time seemed to slow down in my head, and I remember my last thought was, wow, so this is how I die? That's stupid. But here's the thing. At the moment of impact, I woke up in a start, back in my bed. I know it sounds stupid and cheesy, like something from a dumb Netflix show, but there's literally no other way to describe what happened. I was laying in bed right before I got up to shower the first time, but I don't remember falling asleep. And the thing is, I've been a lucid dreamer for the last 5 or so years, and if this was a dream, it was way more vivid than anything I've ever experienced. What weirded me out though, was that the exact same friend who texted me the first time messaged me after I woke up to tell me that the boy she had a crush on had asked another girl out, and she was pretty bummed about it and didn't want to come to the party. I was weirded out that there was some similarity between that and the dream, but I didn't think much of it at first. As I went to reply, my younger brother came in to ask me if I'd take him to his friend's house. All the blood drained from my face. He just stood in the doorway, looking confused, and asked me what was wrong. I rushed into the bathroom, feeling like I was losing my mind, and I went to check the conditioner bottle. I know this sounds completely crazy, but, of course, the bottle was finished, just like before, and the grippy mat was kicked up. At that point, I went to lie back down in bed, and I texted my friends to tell them that I wouldn't be going to the party. I'm sorry if my story's no good. I'm not much of a writer, but at least now you can stop telling me to post this here, Zane. I have for sure died twice, possibly 4 times. Of the 2 I'm very confident in, the first one happened in about 1998, and the other in 2018 or so. In my first instance, my best friend and I were driving gravel back roads in the middle of the night, 40 miles between towns in rural South Dakota. I was, admittedly, going too fast, and we came over a small hill, and there was a T in the road where you could turn left or right, but straight forward was a driveway for a farmhouse. The driveway went for about half a block or so, and then transitioned into a cornfield. I remember saying, "Oh fuck," and slamming on the brake as we started flying through the cornfield. It was late summer, and the corn stalks were basically full grown. The sound, as my car plowed over the corn stalks and into the field, sounded like the most vicious hailstorm ever. The experience was completely overwhelming to the senses. The sights and sounds of flying headlong at high speeds into a fully grown, densely planted cornfield cannot be overstated. But this is where things get weird. The next thing I remember was sitting at a stop sign where we would turn onto the main highway in the area. It was nearly completely silent, with only the light hum of the engine creating any sound. This was at least several miles away from the field that we had just flown into. My blinker was on to the left, and the car was just sitting still with my foot on the brake. The lack of motion and dead silence was, for reasons unknown, absolutely overwhelming. I felt extremely disoriented and discombobulated, and was honestly not certain how I'd come to this point, and was even concerned that perhaps I had blacked out or something. I just wasn't certain how we had arrived to where we currently were. At this point, I didn't remember flying through that intersection or crashing through the cornfield. That memory was gone, either blocked or unremembered. I looked over at my friend and said, "Where are we?" He had a dumbfounded look on his face as well, and shrugged his shoulders, and after a moment said, "I think we go left." I actually got out of the car and found the North Star to make sure that we were turning in the correct direction onto the highway. I also surveyed the situation, grasping for some semblance of understanding. We were surprisingly close to the town I lived in at the time. In short order, we made it to my apartment and both crashed as it was about 4 in the morning, and we had had a very long day. I was dead sober for this entire experience, but I didn't feel right, and I knew something was amiss. We got up the next day, about mid-morning, and got back in my car to drive to my friend's town where he was attending college, which was going to be about a 5-hour drive. We needed gas, and I stopped at a station to fill up and get some other miscellaneous supplies. The car I was driving at the time was old enough to be using a bit of oil, so I almost always checked the oil when I stopped. Again, at this moment, the memories of the cornfield and all that were completely gone. I popped the hood and went around to the front of the car to get to the engine. I lifted the hood and glanced down. I've never been so absolutely baffled and immediately enlightened at the same time. A light breeze would have knocked me over. The engine compartment was almost completely chock full of corn stalks. My knees went weak, and I became very dizzy. Once again, I very loudly and firmly proclaimed, "What the fuck?" and called to my friend so he'd come around to the front of the car. The very instant I saw the cornstalks in the engine compartment, the entire accident flashed back to me. I don't remember the point of death, but I remember all the other details, including being very confused at the stop sign by the highway, and the brutal contrast between flying through the field and sitting still at the stop sign. My friend says to me, "Do you remember?" I simply said, "Yeah." We talked it over multiple times during our long drive, and we had the exact same memories. His memory also returned to him the second that he saw the corn in the car. A couple of months later, I tried to drive the same back roads that we had been driving to find that intersection and that farmhouse and the driveway and cornfield. There were a couple of very unique specific details to the location where the accident happened that should have made it very easy to recognize and find. But I was never able to locate a spot like this on any of the roads anywhere around where we were driving. Microsoft had also just released their satellite imagery, and I scoured everywhere between those two cities, and I've never been able to find the location where we had our accident. I honestly don't think it exists on this timeline. And the other time, I was out in the middle of the night again, in a very rural area during a thunderstorm to take lightning photos. I'm pretty sure that I saw the lightning bolt that killed me prior to my timeline jump. I remember sitting in the car and finishing my styrofoam cup of gas station coffee and hopping out of the car to smoke a cigarette. Most of the lightning was several miles to the west, and it wasn't even actually raining where I parked. I wasn't remotely worried at lightning safety at this point. Now, the very large power lines that take electricity to the town I was living in were right along this road. I've been pretty close to a couple of lightning strikes. I'm no stranger. I remember getting that very powerful static feeling, and the hair on my head and my arms starting to stand up. I knew it was coming. I started to reach for the door handle, and before I knew it, I remember a profoundly huge snap sound and a blinding white light. The next thing I remember was sitting in my parked car with my nearly full cup of coffee. I remember thinking that I wanted to smoke a cigarette, so I chugged the lukewarm coffee and started to get out of the car. The second my feet hit the ground, I felt the most massive wave of deja vu that I've ever experienced, including the cornfield. I nervously glanced up beside the road to look at the power lines, but the spot I stopped previously was still about a mile down the road. I glanced in that direction to about where I thought the spot was that I had previously been in, and just as I looked in that location, a lightning struck the power line in multiple massive flashes, and I even saw the lightning bolt jump down to the ground under the power line. Like I said, I'm pretty sure I witnessed the very lightning bolt that killed me. This all started a few weeks ago, when my husband decided to go into his parents' garage to see if any of his old Pokemon cards are worth any money. His mom has kept literally every toy he's ever had, so there are dozens of boxes of his things that we've been going through. We found a box that clearly hasn't been opened in a long time. It was taped up and had plastic grocery bags laid on the top from a store that hasn't been in our town since the 90s, and it's full of his family's old VHS home videos. His parents documented so much of his childhood, so every night we've watched a home video after supper with his parents, and it's been really fun. The videos are from the late 80s and early 90s. A few nights ago, my husband put a new tape in the VHS player, and the first thing we see is my cousin's 16th birthday party from 1994, and I'm in the video. His parents have no idea how they have this tape, and the weirder thing is, we have no idea who filmed it. I've asked all my aunts and uncles, and no one even knows what I'm talking about. The video also has me hunting for Easter eggs at my aunt's house, also in 1994. My parents never owned a video camera, so it's not their tape. It doesn't make any sense how my in-laws have this tape. We've been trying to come up with logical explanations, but we just can't. My in-laws say the box of tapes hasn't been opened since they put it in the attic when the house was built in 2002, which is before I even met my husband. I would have only been about 11 years old when they built this garage, so it's apparently been there this entire time. It's not like I somehow brought this tape over and forgot about it. It's really freaking me out. This happened 24 years ago, in the year 1999. I completely forgot about this incident until I read a Reddit post very similar to my own experience, and it jogged my memory. And this is kinda long, but I would really appreciate your comments as to what you think actually happened that day. To those of you who read to the end, I thank you in advance. I was home from college for the summer visiting my family. One day, I asked my mom to borrow her car so I can go visit my friends who stayed at the dorm during summer vacation. She said I could, but I needed to be home before 10 a.m. the next morning because she needed her car the next day. My college was about an hour's drive from my house on a good day. Some friends of mine would make it in 45 minutes. The quickest driving time I'd ever heard was 35 minutes, which was late at night with no traffic and driving like the wind. I got to my friend's house, our dorm residence, in the early evening, and we decided to drive down to the nearby casino, about 30 minutes drive, to pass the night. We were a group of about 5, 2 of my roommates, 2 other friends from our dorm, and I. We had a great time playing on the quarter slot machines. Once we were all tired and ready to leave, we head to the lobby doors, and I realized that it was early morning, around 5 a.m., and it was pouring rain. It was raining so hard, we could barely see the first row of parked cars, just in front of the lobby. We waited for about 30 minutes or so for the rain to slow to a drizzle so we could drive home, and we made the 30-minute drive without incident. And when we got to the dorm, it was around 6 a.m., and the rain started pouring down again. So, I resolved to wait it out as long as I could. I still had to return the car to my mom, and I had at least an hour's drive, if not longer, due to the weather. When I left the dorm, it was 7 a.m. One of my roommates had stayed up with me until I left, and we both noted the time as I was leaving. I got to my car a few minutes later and started driving toward the highway. I was really tired since we basically pulled an all-nighter at the casino, but I had to drive home to return the car to my mom. I do not recommend driving tired, but I told myself I'd be fine. I cranked up the radio to my favorite station, lit a cigarette, opened the window for some fresh air, and off I went. Again, please do not drive while tired. Within 10 minutes or so, as I'm driving on the highway, the rain started pouring again. It was so bad, I could barely see the wipers of my car. They were at the fastest setting, and it's like they weren't doing anything. But the rain was kind of hypnotizing. The rhythm sort of started lulling me to sleep, but I didn't really notice. My blinks kept getting slower and slower. What happened next was in a span of about 3 to 5 seconds, not anymore. It's kind of hard to explain. I was awake one moment, sort of, and the next, my consciousness wakes up to darkness. And kind of like when you wake up in the morning, but you haven't opened your eyes yet, and you're slowly starting to be aware of your surroundings, how comfortable and warm you are in your bed, etc. That's basically what happened. I'm aware of being awake, but it's dark. I don't even notice my eyes are closed. I'm comfortable, but I seem to be in a sitting position. My hands are holding on to something, but I'm not sure what it is exactly. I'm just really comfortable, and I don't want it to change. I kept thinking, just 5 more minutes. I don't know for how long my eyes were actually closed. Suddenly, I hear a really, really loud crash. It almost sounded like a clap, unlike anything I'd ever heard before. It sounded like metal on metal, but I wasn't sure. It got me to open my eyes, and the first thing I notice is that I'm in a car, and all I see from the window is a wave of water heading toward my windshield really fast. When it hit the windshield of the car, it sounded like the glass should have broken from impact. It was the loudest slap sound I have ever heard, before and since. I'm in momentary shock as I take in my surroundings. I'm in a car, driving perfectly straight in the leftmost lane. On my left is a concrete barrier just a couple of feet away. On my right, I was just overtaken by a huge 18-wheeler truck. And that is what made the wave slap my windshield. Heart pounding, I rub my eyes and force them open as far as they go, determined to stay awake. I turn the music louder and open the window more to let the rain hit me in the face, along with some more much-needed fresh air. The entire time I was thinking, holy shit, I could have died. I should have died. And then another thought hit me. What the fuck was that first loud crash I heard? The time elapsed between the first and second claps was about 1 second. I heard the loud clap and opened my eyes to the wave that crashed into the window, but it sounded different. But this wasn't the craziest part yet. Since the rain was very strong, I wasn't driving more than 50 or 60 miles an hour, as opposed to the usual 75. This means that the trip should have taken twice as long as it normally would. I figured I'd be home about 9 a.m. The rest of the drive was uneventful, and I made it back to my building, drove into the very large garage, and all the way in the back to my parents' parking spot. And then, I walked back around to the elevators by the entrance, and took the elevator to the 19th floor. I walked down a long hallway to my apartment, went into my room, and crashed on the bed. Right before I passed out, I remembered sending my roommate a text message to let her know I'd made it home safely. I was so tired, I didn't even check what time it was. I just went right to sleep. I woke up to a bunch of messages from my roommate. I don't remember them verbatim, but they were something like, "What? No way. Where are you? Hello? How did you get home so fast? There's no way you're already home. Are you okay?" It takes me a while to figure out what she's talking about. And then I remembered my harrowing journey from this morning, because it was then that I noticed the time of the text that I had sent before I went to sleep. It was showing 7:20 a.m. There's no way possible to travel around 50 miles in a span of 20 minutes in a rainstorm, where you can't even see the lanes on the road, or even the hood of your car, while trying desperately not to fall asleep, and apparently failing at that. I don't know what to make of this. After reading a bunch of other stories on this sub, I'm pretty sure it may have been either a case of quantum immortality or a glitch in the Matrix.